It's the episode about a terrifying giant cockroach hunting a furry pig-like alien, an episode conceived by a writer in the grips of a crippling drug addiction for the lighthearted family sitcom ALF. This is the story of TV writer Jerry Stahl, and the episode he wrote of a.l.f. that still elicits Gen X nightmares. It's La Cucaracha, next on Dark Tube TV's Wicked History, presented by Best Eps. In 1985, Jack Klugman, fresh off his success with Quincy M.E., decided to return to television, this time in a sitcom You Again. It had every chance of success, with Klugman's gruff Oscar Madison persona playing off the naivete of coverboy John Stamos. The executive producer, too, had a ton of sitcom experience. Tom Patchett had won Emmys for his work on The Bob Newhart Show and Buffalo Bill. Early in You Again's pre-production, a junior development executive slid a Playboy magazine across Patchett's desk. Dog-eared was a piece of comic fiction written by her boyfriend, Jerry Stahl. When Patchett read it, he recognized Stahl's comedic potential and offered him a staff position on You Again. But Stahl wasn't thrilled. See, he moved to LA from New York to be a novelist, not a TV writer. To top off his annoyance, Stahl didn't realize he was walking into a lion's den. Klugman was cantankerous, firing Tom Patchett shortly after Stahl signed on. But while Stahl languished at You Again, pitching stories Klugman routinely ridiculed, Patchett moved on to more far-out endeavors. Later that year, Hollywood manager Bernie Brillstein paired him with actor-puppeteer Paul Fusco to conceive of a sitcom for Fusco's invention, a.l.f. But a pitch meeting at CBS fell flat, with President Bud Grant scoffing at this, quote, robo-dog from outer space. And things looked equally bleak during a meeting with Brandon Tartikoff and Warren Littlefield at NBC. That is, until Fusco reached down under the table into a green hefty bag and produced the puppet in question. "Hey guys, wake up," a.l.f. barked. "I got a hit show for you." Wrote Tartikoff, suddenly there was this furry little brown creature whose attitude was like a cross between Rodney Dangerfield and Groucho Marx. Fusco then made a.l.f. sneeze and wiped his nose on Tartikoff's sleeve. As Brillstein later recalled, Tartikoff laughed and said, "I get it, let's go." Recalls Littlefield, "It was the funniest pitch meeting I'd ever seen." With production of a.l.f.'s first season underway, Patchett remembered Jerry Stahl and called him in to pitch some story ideas. But he had no idea that by this time, Jerry Stahl was a full-blown drug addict. What drugs? All the drugs, but particularly cocaine and heroin. Stahl came into the writer's room wired and writhing like a grain sack of electric eels, and proceeded to speed through a story idea in which a.l.f. sees a giant insect and is so traumatized that he has to go into therapy. Patchett stared at him blankly, but then shrugged. It could work. After all, a.l.f. was an alien and giant bugs were kinda sci-fi. So Patchett sent Stahl off to write this first draft. As he was leaving, Stahl realized something. He had never actually written a TV script before. On You Again, he'd written prose outlines. So he asked story editor Donald Todd how long this draft should be. 90, 95 pages, Todd said without looking up. Stahl went home, did a copious amount of drugs, and sat down to write La Cucaracha, drawing on a number of influences. Of course, there was the film Aliens, which had just come out around the time Stahl pitched the episode.
"We don't need an exterminator. We need Sigourney Weaver."
But also chittering in the back of his mind was Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, a story from 1916 in which a man wakes up to find he's been turned into a giant insect. As was 1959's Naked Lunch, a drug-hazed piece of abstract surrealism, exploring themes of paranoia and addiction and metamorphosis, written by William S. Burroughs, himself a one-time bug exterminator and heroin addict. "Most of my heroes were junkies," Stahl told the New York Times in 1994, citing Burroughs, Keith Richards, Miles Davis, and Lenny Bruce, adding, "They wouldn't be caught dead doing an episode of a.l.f." Perhaps that's why Stahl wove in a not-so-subtle bug-as-addiction allegory into the fabric of La Cucaracha's first draft, which he hammered out in a day and a half, all 100 pages of it. When he turned it back into Donald Todd, the man went bug-eyed. He was kidding about the length. Sitcom scripts tend to clock in at 2 minutes per page, so 44 pages would have been good. Stahl had to go home and trim more than half of his work, excising the whole PTSD shrink storyline. Stahl's rewrite and the one done by the in-house writers took a little longer than expected, so La Cucaracha didn't go into production until near the end of that first season. But when it finally hit the air, many at home didn't realize they were watching a drug addict trying to exorcise his demons.
A.l.f., that man around Melmac, will return after these messages.
Tonight on A.l.f.
There is a space roach loose in our house.
You comparing me to a cockroach?
A pest from the planet Melmac could put A.l.f. to rest.
Tonight.
We now return to A.l.f.
La Cucaracha aired on NBC on May 4th, 1987, and it is a fever dream of a sitcom episode. A.l.f. discovers a Melmacian cockroach has stowed away on his crashed ship, and it only grows in size and menace when sprayed by chemicals.
Right!
The family walks out on A.l.f. and Willie until a professional exterminator arrives, played by Doug Warhit. But he too is soon scared off by the sheer size of the bug, which has grown out of control, beyond any outside help. Then Willie has no choice. He must leave a terrified A.l.f. alone while he goes to get something to kill the roach. But not before giving A.l.f. a hug that is way more tender and heartfelt than it has any darn right to be. After Willie leaves A.l.f. alone with his addiction, the giant bug, A.l.f. hides in the bathroom as the cockroach smashes and skitters, trying to break down the door.
Oh, you want to use the bathroom? Is that it? Hey, I know the feeling. Ah!
Now, some addicts have an expression that their addiction is just outside the door, growing larger, doing push-ups, just waiting to break in. Aside from the obvious nod to The Shining, that's kind of what's happening here in this horrifying little scene, underscored by Alf Clausen's wonderfully chilling music. Paul Fusco admitted recently that the scene initially gave him nightmares, and Jerry Stahl later wrote in his memoir Permanent Midnight that after the episode aired, while he was getting high in the bathroom at A.l.f.'s Burbank studio, he hallucinated A.l.f. was trying to break down the bathroom door to stop him from doing drugs.
Junkie.
Anyway, in the actual episode, A.l.f. reaches for a bottle of cheap perfume given to Kate by Willie for her birthday. A gift of love, perhaps, which apparently kills the addiction, the bug, dead. Upon its airing, La Cucaracha scored 16% of the TV viewers that night, slotting it at number 19 out of 70 shows that week. And today, it has a bit of a legacy as nightmare fuel for a generation of young Gen Xers. But at the time, despite its reception, Jerry Stahl was miserable. I was Jerry Stahl, writing bad TV and hating it. Yet despite his increasing drug dependency, other TV shows came knocking. In Hollywood, he says, producers don't hire you because you're any good as much as they hire you because someone else did. So in 1988, ABC offered him $3,500 a week to join the staff as a story editor on Moonlighting. Now, he didn't want this gig, but his agent told him he should take it, so he did. The Moonlighting credit he wrote was, quote, one I thought would look good if it could just be done, as opposed to actually having to do it. But then, after watching tapes of the first season, he retched at the thought of having to work there. Sybil Shepherd seemed wholly miserable, so uncomfortable, like she was trapped in the TV screen and couldn't wait to go home and shower, he wrote. I kind of related. Plus, Stahl was tapped to join the show's 5th season when the backstage infighting was already kind of legendary in Hollywood. Of his stint at Moonlighting, Stahl said he would routinely shoot up in the privacy of his corner office, adding that his one and only solo script credit, the bizarre Plastic Fantastic Lovers, was so heavily rewritten that he didn't recognize it. When Moonlighting was canceled, it was off to the 21 Jump Street spin-off Booker and then to 30-something. Now he was making $5,000 a week and spending $6,000 a week on Smack. He was barely even able to function when he got an offer to write for David Lynch's Twin Peaks. But this time, he was excited to work with the avant-garde director. As he wrote in an LA Style piece in 1992, it was as close to a dream come true as I'd ever hoped to get. But sadly, he never even got to meet Lynch. Instead, he was faced with Lynch's executive producer, Mark Frost, who called his experience with Stahl, quote, an absolute car wreck. In his memoir, Stahl recalls that initial story meeting with Frost and calls Frost out for the producer's fill-in-the-blanks philosophy of TV writing, though he does admit to excusing himself from that meeting to shoot up in the can. Reading this in Stahl's memoir, Frost grew incensed. I got as angry as I'd ever been in my professional life when I read what this clown had to say about how he'd been mistreated while he was taking money for work he didn't honor and doing heroin in our bathroom. See, Stahl went off to write that first draft of Twin Peaks, but he flat out forgot about it until a courier from City Studios knocked on his door looking for the script. I had spent the previous 6 days injecting speedballs, obscenely huge cocktails of cocaine and heroin with such regularity that my arms had swollen to the size of clubs. Still, Stahl managed to hammer out something resembling a first draft and sent it in, but Twin Peaks did not call back after that. Said Frost in Reflections, an oral history of Twin Peaks, he turned in a completely incomprehensible, unusable, incomplete script a few days late, and as I recall, there were bloodstains on it. Writer-producer Harley Payton adds that the writers fought to take Stahl's name off the script, but failed. It was the only time in the history of the show where Mark Frost said, no, we're taking credit on this. What was handed in was essentially so worthless that we sort of had to start from scratch. After that, Stahl sank further into his addiction, soon losing his family and his house and gaining Hep C. In early 1992, he moved into a friend's garage and only got clean when the LA riots prevented him from going out to score more drugs. The sky was black. Ash was falling from the fires. It was one of those times when life imitates melodrama. A power greater than myself took care of me at that point because I couldn't have done it on my own. The 1990s saw Jerry Stahl reveling in his sobriety. 5 months after the riots, he wrote an article for LA Style magazine called Naked Brunch, which was turned into his memoir Permanent Midnight and the Ben Stiller film. But by the end of the decade, he was convinced his burned bridges meant that his TV writing days were behind him. He was writing novels now with the occasional big toe dipped into film, until he had a chance meeting in a sauna of all places. While at the Hollywood YMCA, Stahl bumped into actor William Peterson. Soon they found they had a mutual admiration for each other's work, though Peterson admitted that television was the furthest thing from his mind. He did mention there was this new script that had come across his desk and it was kind of different. It was innovative and risky and dark. Actually, it might be the kind of show Stahl would be perfect for. So when Peterson finally did sign on to star in and produce CSI, he called Stahl. Now, Stahl was not eager to join the staff of another TV series, but he did offer his services as an overall consultant and went on to write some of CSI's best eps. Which ones? The dark ones, the kinky ones, the weird ones. The episode where Grissom is seduced by a dominatrix.
I like a bit of civility before dark, when all the needy little boys show up.
Well, I'm a little needy myself today.
The episode where the team tries to solve a murder at a furry convention.
Well, I like hairy chests, but I'm not about to bop a 6-foot weasel.
The episode where the team investigates a murder by a cannibal vampire.
You want an empirical experience? There's a fresh shake in my fridge.
The memorable and controversial nature of Stahl's CSI episodes actually revived his TV writing career, and he became a sought-after scribe, serving as a writer on fellow recovering addict Mark Maron's series, and being nominated for an Emmy for his work on the excellent miniseries Escape at Dannemora. Now I love TV writing when I have the opportunity, Stahl told Believer magazine in 2015, because you can do some cool stuff, and some of the best writing in the world is out there on television.